I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. In case you missed it somehow, a grand jury in Manhattan has indicted former President Donald Trump, making him the first former U.S. president in history to face a criminal charge. We'll have continuing coverage coming up at 6:30. In the meantime, let's talk about law and order in eastern Oregon, specifically Grant County, where the sheriff says one-size-fits-all laws being passed by the big cities don't work out there. And the former U.S. attorney for Oregon warns all of us it is dangerous to dismiss those who live in our rural areas. In many parts of eastern Oregon, there are likely more cows than people. It's that rural. According to the Census Bureau, there are roughly 1.6 people for every square mile, and there are even fewer law enforcement officers. It's a throwback to the historic West, where people are independent and protect themselves without the help of police or sheriff's deputies.
People need to be able to defend themselves, and I expect them to out here.
Todd McKinley became the sheriff of Grant County in 2021. He's lived in rural Oregon since the late 70s and started working law enforcement in the late 90s. How long does it take to get to a call?
It can take, I have driven my patrol car 100 miles an hour for an hour and stayed inside the county to get to a call.
Wow. Yeah, so if somebody's in a fight or has somebody attacking them.
It's going to be over long before we get there, hopefully. And hopefully the right side has prevailed.
It's one reason the sheriff and many on this side of Oregon are frustrated with the passage of Ballot Measure 114. The gun control law limits the size of gun magazines and requires people to take a class and get a permit before buying a gun. It's currently frozen in an eastern Oregon court as opponents argue that it's unconstitutional. The sheriff has little patience for that law. And what about under 114? You're going to have to set up a training proposal and give people permits?
I don't have the staffing.
Yeah, it's just not practical.
It is not. It's an unfunded mandate, and I don't know how we expect the local taxpayers to come up with that, and then it's going to deprive them of their constitutional right of owning a firearm if I cannot get that program up and running. And it has to be in the county that you reside.
Yeah, so that's, I think, a good example of the frustration of the West Side mandating things for your community.
Yeah, absolutely.
According to the Secretary of State's office, Measure 114 failed miserably in Grant County, voted down with 3,471 no votes and just 654 yes votes. But on the west side, in Multnomah County, which holds the largest population in Oregon and where the effort to promote 114 began, it passed by a landslide. 266,862 yes votes and just 93,392 no votes. That helped pass the measure statewide. And that's what many in rural communities mean when they say the West Side and the big cities control the state of Oregon. Here on the bluffs above John Day, the wind howls and it seems like you can see for 100 miles. It's gorgeous. There's no tall buildings, there's no city congestion. Everything is different. And one thing that I'm hearing from people out here is that they resent being forced to live under the same laws and rules that may work for the city, but don't work out here. That feeling's been around for decades, but more recently gave birth to the Greater Idaho movement, which promises to do something about it. 11 rural counties so far have voted to begin serious talks about moving the Idaho border so that it would cover them, take them away from Oregon, and let them live under Idaho's more conservative values. The new border, as envisioned by the movement, would cover a total of 15 counties and look something like this. We think it's unlikely that it will ever happen, but it is evidence that many in rural communities are deeply angry and convinced Oregon will never recognize or honor their values. That's why we're here in Grant County, to talk with people who live here and listen to their frustrations. While many here are supporters of the movement, the sheriff is on the fence about whether Grant County should become part of Idaho. If there was a vote tomorrow to make this part of Idaho, how would you vote?
I still don't know. The jury is out on that. I think I'm fairly informed on it, but I don't know if I would be part of a better thing or we'd end up right back where we are. And I think we've kind of talked about that.
Can you tease that out a little bit more? Because when we were talking about it, we weren't getting to that part on camera.
Sure. So my concern is Idaho going to change with Boise, and we be right back in the same place we already are perceived to be? And will they want to get rid of us at some point? You know, it was a bad take, or are we going to want to get rid of them? I just don't know if it's going to be best for both of us.
But the sheriff is as frustrated as anyone when it comes to statewide laws passed by voters in the urban counties that impact lives here. Measure 110, for example, which decriminalized user amounts of drugs. During the 2020 vote in Grant County, the measure was voted down, with 2,811 no votes and 1,626 yes votes. However, in Multnomah County, where the measure began, it easily passed with 333,042 yes votes and 115,034 no's.
From my side of the view on 110, and I've voiced my opinion before, it's an epic failure. Measure 110 has, from my observations and who we're working with and dealing with, it has not been beneficial.
Like many in law enforcement, Sheriff McKinley is frustrated the measure is all carrot and no stick, that there are no consequences now for drug use and no incentive for users to stop. Do you think there's more drugs in the county because of it?
Absolutely.
And more people using?
Sure. Hard to quantify, but I believe what I see out there, that's accurate. And I think on one of the outtakes of that is our mental health calls that we're getting also. Drug-induced psychosis, different drug-related issues that are affecting the mental health, and we're seeing more and more of that. And it's hard for the treatment provider to help them if they show up at the hospital and they're under the influence, because they need to be sober for them to be able to help them. And now the tool of getting them into jail on a crime for the possession, and actually using that as the stepping stone to get them to get help is gone. I can't even have them here, get them sobered up. They go see a treatment provider sober, and usually they do that while they're in custody. That's ended.
And if you have people who are psychotic and maybe can't be restored, as they say, there's probably not much room in the state hospital.
No. And it ends up being a revolving door, and we're trying to find beds for people and spending hours of our time sitting with them because they're completely out of their minds, trying to get them secure till they get to a facility, and it's just a complete waste of time.
Now, you might think that ignoring the rural counties is fine, but Oregon's former U.S. attorney says it's not. It's dangerous.
That I, grew up in rural settings in Washington and Idaho, and I get it. I understand why there's this anti-federal government sentiment.
Billy Williams was the top federal law enforcement officer in the state of Oregon from 2015 until 2021. He dealt with the takeover of the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge by Ammon Bundy and his anti-government followers in January of 2016. It happened right next door to Grant County. I dialed him up for a Zoom call as I wondered about the danger posed by the overwhelming feelings many have in rural Oregon that the people controlling the state in the big cities do not care about them.
With this divide, and if it continues to grow, does that create fertile breeding grounds for these anti-government groups?
It absolutely does. And look, the Bundys and their followers and other far-right extremists love these opportunities because that's where they inject themselves.
Ammon Bundy and dozens of armed occupiers took over the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge and held it for most of January as a protest against the federal government. Bundy was eventually arrested and a member of his group, Lavoy Finicum, killed on January 26th as they drove from the refuge to a meeting in Grant County. They had planned to meet with the sheriff at the time, Glenn Palmer. For Williams, the former U.S. attorney, it's a reminder that the feelings generated by the urban-rural divide could easily lead to violence.
Extremists thrive for those days of extremist engagement, right? They want those awful things to happen because they don't care about people. They only care about their own perspectives. And And I could see this leading to something like that, whether it be Waco or Mount Here or anything else, or more gun violence, going on. Somebody who's just an extremist, or somebody who has some mental health issues, and they find themselves in the possession of a gun and open fire. We don't want that. We don't need that.
Back in Grant County, the new sheriff, Todd McKinley, is also aware of the danger. But despite the lack of political clout his rural population has in the rest of Oregon, he is hopeful that things will get better.
Some of us are in this fight for the long haul, and that's why we're still here. We still have hope.
We've asked Oregon Governor Tina Kotek for an interview to get her reaction to the many voices that we've heard this week. We've not heard back from her office yet. In the meantime, tomorrow we'll head to Northeast Oregon and talk about wolves. They've made a big comeback there, and one rancher wants you to know what it's like to live with the threat of a wolf attack. Now, let's take a look at some of your comments on our Greater Idaho series. Most of these came following last night's report, and we can tell you that you are fired up. Maybe we don't need to tell you that. How about this from Robert? I'm tired of hearing about Greater Idaho movement. There's no movement. This nothing more than a belch from a minuscule conservative minority of the state that stinks, as one might expect a belch would. Okay. Christie says we are sick of Oregon's overtaxation and no police protection, the crime, the drugs, the nefarious activities in general, and we simply don't feel safe. We want out of here. It used to not be like this until the disease of liberalism changed it. We are done.
I've lived in Oregon my whole life. I'm 93. I've lived in Portland. I grew up there. I've been in La Grande for 50 years. And when I hear about joining Idaho, it makes me very, very angry. Because some people say, yeah, we're so different out here. Well, that makes Oregon wonderful. We are different than maybe the West, politically and otherwise, and that's true. But that makes Oregon even better.
Or what about this from Lynn? It's getting old hearing the urban folks tell the east side, if you don't like it, why don't you just move? To them I say, why don't you stop whining about Portland and just move? Not always that simple, is it? Shirley says, I don't think moving the border is a good idea. I have family living in Idaho and am aware of many drawbacks in that state as well as Oregon. As my mom once said, the grass looks greener on the other side of the fence, but it still has to be mowed. And Tom chimed in, this is all a waste of time. It will never happen. As for Salem not listening, I voted for Hillary, but had Trump for president. The whining about not getting what you want is just life in America. Many of you agree that Governor Kotek should hold a listening tour of her own in the eastern part of the state. Peter says Kotek was elected governor of Oregon, not just governor of the people she agrees with in Oregon. She should focus on advocating policy for everyone and learning what challenges exist across the spectrum. It's like I have to remind my 3-year-old, we need to put our listening ears on. Our elected officials need to go back to basics. Finally, several of you have asked us to show how much tax money flows out to those 11 counties from the state and how much they send in. We have been trying to figure that out all week and have contacted many government offices to try to get the numbers. Turns out that's a much more complicated question than it sounds. Just know that we've heard you and we are working on it. I do think it's a safe bet to say they get way more than they pay into the system, but I do hope to nail down specific numbers soon. So, what do you think about the series or the movement so far? Send us an email, will you? The address is thestory@kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. And if you've missed parts 1, 2, or 3 of our Eastern Oregon listening tour, no problem. You can watch them right now on our streaming channel, KGW+. It can be found on Roku or Amazon Fire. Add it to your homepage so that you can watch segments or full episodes of this show, The Story, anytime. You can also head to the KGW YouTube channel to find our content. It's updated every single weekday. Still to come on The Story. After Kyle Leboshi's reports on rampant EBT card fraud, lawmakers in D.C. are listening.
Not wait around anymore, not see more people hurt, not see more tax dollars, lost by using this outdated technology.
Plus, Kyle got his hands on Oregon's proposed plan when it comes to stolen food benefits, and if they're considering the seemingly simple step of adding chips to EBT cards to make them more secure.
I'm sure they have enough money to put a chip in a damn card.
When the story returns. Welcome back. We often report on complex problems that are difficult to solve, but this one, you just want to say, come on, man. It's easy to fix, at least from our perspective. For the past several months, investigative reporter Kyle Aboshi has talked to several low-income families who struggled to make ends meet, and then crooks stole their food stamp benefits using hidden skimming devices. Come on. Food stamp benefits, or EBT cards, are especially vulnerable because they don't have a chip technology that most of our credit and debit cards have. As Oregon Senator Ron Wyden said, this is a textbook case of government failure to help people who need it the most.
The problem is clear, and we've seen it firsthand. Low-income families getting ripped off.
We rely on those food benefits to eat.
By fraudsters stealing their food stamp benefits.
My money was gone, and I didn't understand what was going on.
And nobody seems to be protecting them.
I'm like, this can't be. I know there is money in there.
After hearing the complaints, Senator Ron Wyden is demanding tougher security for the benefit cards that low-income families use to buy groceries.
What I want to do is I want to put the thieves out of business.
Earlier this month, Wyden sent a letter to the USDA urging the federal agency to upgrade EBT cards with smart chip technology, which makes them more difficult for fraudsters to skim.
What I want to do is I want to play some really aggressive catch-up ball and make sure that we have a strong federal standard, not wait around anymore, not see more people hurt, not see more tax dollars, lost by using this outdated technologies.
Over the past several months, the USDA, along with several states, have warned about fraud tied to EBT accounts. Crooks often skim EBT cards by secretly installing a device on ATM readers that sends card numbers and PIN numbers back to the thieves, who then create fake cards and drain accounts. Skimming can be devastating to households already struggling to make ends meet, especially because states like Oregon have declined to reimburse victims. In January, fraudsters stole nearly $500 in food stamp benefits from Lisa Jones. She relied on those benefits to feed her family.
I'm losing sleep over it. It's making me nauseous. I'm not able to focus on my stuff. I'm a student. I'm a part-time student. I work part-time, and I'm a mom of 3, and it's just kept me really distracted and keeps me up at night, worried sick.
Late last year, Congress approved a spending bill that allows food stamp or SNAP recipients to be reimbursed for stolen benefits. But first, all 50 states must submit a plan on how they're going to do that. Oregon's proposed plan, obtained through a public records request, shows the state intends to replace food benefits stolen by card skimming and beef up fraud detection. Additional measures that increase overall card security are also being evaluated, such as adding chip technology to the card. And that's the important part, victims tell us, the chips. Throughout our reporting, EBT recipients have made it clear they should have the same security technology as everyone else using the banking system.
I'm sure they have enough money to put a chip in a damn card.
In a statement, the USDA explained any state agency can choose to adopt chip-enabled cards. SNAP state agencies do not need a waiver or approval. But so far, every state, including Oregon, still uses the old-fashioned cards with a magnetic stripe and no chip, leaving low-income households vulnerable to fraud. Kyle Aboshi, KGW News.
Thanks, Kyle. Up next on the story, many of you have strong feelings about Senate Bill 4. It would give Governor Tina Kotek superpowers when it comes to urban growth boundaries and semiconductor facilities. But there's a piece of the bill that we missed in our reporting last night that would rein in some of those superpowers, at least a little bit. We'll explain when the story returns.
Straight ahead on KGW News, can former President Trump continue his run to retake the White House? Our Verified team looks at the impact of today's grand jury indictment. Plus, an explosion catches one, then two Portland homes on fire. Why crews had a challenging time just getting to the scene. That's coming up at 6:30. Hope to see you then.
Let's talk some more about Senate Bill 4, which concerns the semiconductor industry. The bill passed the Oregon Senate yesterday and had its first reading in the House today before being sent to the Ways and Means Committee. They're the ones who deal with all the money. Here's how the money shakes out in this bill as it stands now. $210 million total. $190 million in state money would go to support applications by Oregon semiconductor companies for a piece of the $52 billion that will soon be available in federal dollars. $10 million would also go to local governments to help prepare land for semiconductor development, and the final $10 million will go to university innovation research funds to help train the next generation of chip workers. Companies can apply for grants or loans of up to $50 million. For every $1 million they get, they must commit to a certain number of jobs that are created, with 65% of the jobs being permanent and paying at least the median income for their location, or they have to generate at least $1.25 million in state and local revenues. But now let's get to the part that has so many upset. The bill will give Governor Tina Kotek what we're calling a superpower. It will allow her to designate certain plots of land needed for chip factories. It would take away the land use restrictions that would ordinarily make it impossible to build there. The governor will have the power to issue an executive order and move a plot of land that is outside the urban growth boundary into the boundary. She will be able to do that with up to 8 sites, 2 that are any size larger than 500 acres and 6 that are up to 500 acres. And here's the part of the bill that we missed in our reporting yesterday. The governor will not have this superpower forever. She would have to choose these plots of land before the year 2025. The bill specifically says the last day she could use the executive order for that purpose is December 31st, 2024. After choosing a piece of land, she has to hold a public hearing near the site before bringing it into the urban growth boundary and then take comments for 20 days. So the bill is a big deal for sure. We'll keep an eye on it as it moves forward, but there is bipartisan support and it is being fast-tracked through the legislature. It's going to become law, it seems, very soon. Nonetheless, let's look at some of your thoughts on Senate Bill 4. Some of you are welcoming the idea. Greg says it's a very small, tiny adjustment to Oregon land use laws. It's just 8 tracts of land. Everybody should take a breath. John says, I feel that we are in such need of this technology in our country that the governor should have the authority to make it happen. And a viewer who did not leave a name says, I agree with Senate Bill 4. I'm tired of the crap with nothing ever getting done. If we need one person to get stuff done, okay. By the way, that's our asterisk. They wrote the real word. Meanwhile, many of you think the superpower is going just too far. Shirley writes, no one should have this kind of power to declare a property usable that was not prior. This is an issue that should be voted on by Oregonians rather than a private individual or committee. And Sarah agrees. This is a terrible idea. Crazy to have one person to be able to change the UGB. By the way, UGB stands for Urban Growth Boundary. For those of you who are wondering, try that out on your neighbors tomorrow. They'll be impressed. Finally, this from Roger. I'm a liberal Democrat, but this bill sounds like we're moving toward authoritarian rule. The governor should not have the power to move the UGB without a full impact review of the effects of changing the current property designation. And proponents would argue that Roger's point, saying that full impact review is, well, that's what causes delays that scare companies off. But Roger, we do get your point. It's yet another issue that has Oregonians split. We talked with the co-chairs of the legislature's Committee on Semiconductors that helped craft this bill. Check it out on the KGW YouTube channel if you'd like to learn more and hear from them directly. In the meantime, keep sending your questions and comments to our address. The email is thestory@kgw.com. We're going to wrap things up right after this. Well, that's the end of our show. Thanks so much for watching. And remember the story, our story, that never ends. I'll see you tomorrow.
This is KGW.